And then you look at like some of our laws, and you look at some of our imagery and some of our unconscious imagery through Disney, for instance, and you're like, oh, this stuff is like unconsciously being imprinted. So it is, when you look at all the different evidence presented in front of you, the information, you're kind of like, ouch, this has been happening for a while.
I kind of think that with things like child trafficking and paedophilia, I feel like it's very much so ingrained in European culture. I feel like they've been subtly pushing it in all realms in life. Like, so just the age of consent. Like, you've got people who think that if you're the age that they say it's okay to have sex, it's okay for a person who's 10, 15 years older to be with that person. And then you've got, as I said, the development of growth within a person at a certain age, or say like they've just kind of sprinkled their ways into different parts of society, and society has somewhat accepted it. So when that time does come for when say they actually make paedophilia a thing, because I believe that they are going to make paedophilia legal.
They've already started.
I've made a prediction twice now that our culture is on a path towards accepting and normalising paedophilia. The first time was in the Stay Free series, and then the second time was in the War and Truth series. My reasoning for saying it in Stay Free was basically that we are watching the moral breakdown of our society today. The West has rejected God, rejected Christianity, rejected the moral underpinnings of our civilization that's guided us for 2,000 years. And therefore we're starting to see our civilization fall apart. One of the key signs that a civilization is indeed unraveling, and we see this time and time again from history, is that it starts to accept and promote sexual confusion. The most famous...
And it just happened after Tom Hanks and his family got diplomatic immunity in Greece, that they're looking at putting paedophilia down as a disability.
Is it though? Is it a mental illness, or is it
that's not a surprise
construct?
Though.
Is it like a construct?
It's an idea.
Yeah.
It's an idea for them to get their freak off, because that's all they really want to do. No. It's true.
Yeah.
It's like to say, oh, I'm confused, so I want to become something else.
Yeah.
And because your world allows it, I can become someone else. And now that I'm someone else, you lot are protecting my rights to be someone else, even though it makes no sense.
Even in primary school, because I remember learning having sex education when I was in, is it year 6, year 5? And I'm like, now I'm thinking, I'm like, what was the purpose of us needing to know that stuff? Even like a banana, like they used to show us, and I think to myself, why do we need to learn that? We're kids. Why are you making us so aware of that?
Bro, if you can marry animals,
Yeah, just that.
that's it, innit? Really? Like, so.
Trying to find
It ain't really hard to believe that they are gonna actually legalize paedophilia, because it is a European way of life. I mean, it's in their texts, it's in their statutes.
Pederasty in ancient Greece was a socially acknowledged romantic relationship between an adult male, the Erasts, and a younger male, the Eromenos, usually in his teens. It was characteristic of the Archaic and Classical periods. The influence of pederasty on Greek culture of these periods was so pervasive that it has been called the principal cultural model for free relationships between citizens. Some scholars locate its origin in initiation ritual, particularly rites of passage on Crete.
That's what they push.
That came from the Roman Empire, that kind of period, because if you look at it, and I remember years ago looking at a documentary, I'm trying to see if I can find a thing, the Greece thing. someone was breaking down a lot of the thing within the church and the monuments and the statues and stuff are.
Yeah.
And they were saying it's hidden in plain sight, because if you go past it, you see it, but you don't pay attention to it. And if you see a lot of it, it's got not homophobic, homosexual entities. So you'll have certain things with like men groping men, or men doing certain things. And there was one particular thing that I will never forget, and it was where it was placed. To say like you've got the church here, and then the doors will be here. It's the bit that's just
above
over at the front.
The church.
Yeah, but you know the ones in the corners, like the little top of the pillar bit. And it literally had a man who had his penis out, and it was a young boy. You can actually see it, because they always used to do the way you could tell if it's a child, didn't it? But the child was upside down, so it's like a double-sided image, and he's laying down with the penis in his mouth.
This is why.
Right.
This is why. Look.
But it's on a church.
But then you see it in paintings as well. Have you seen all those
Of
old
course.
school paintings where you've got like a mix of like young and old, and they're all naked, and it's all like
Even, right, I'm not sure if this is the correct term for them, but I think it's the Jewish rabbis, right?
yeah.
When they circumcise your child, they suck the penis.
Yeah. And
This
then they
is
bite,
a
they
thing.
do it and then bite it.
I don't know about biting
But they
it,
de- yeah,
but
they
they suck
definitely-
the penis, right? It's out there. You go on the internet and type in something along them lines, it comes up. So what I'm saying, is that this is okay for them, right? So if it's okay for them, and they are one of the most powerful groups in society, they can force this down on everybody. Right?
What would be the purpose of it?
I don't know.
Because I'm like thinking, is it about? Because remember we was talking about the other day about, you know, like when we have sex, we've been taught to just like ejaculate, for instance, and maybe it's about owning our life force energy. So instead of ejaculating, you stop yourself so that it travels around your body, and then you actually enlighten yourself.
Apparently, it says the process has the mohel fluid is in the mouth directly on the circumcision wound to draw blood away from the cup.
Screenshot all that.
Yeah.
And then it says the vast majority of Jewish circumcision ceremonies do not use, I don't know how to pronounce that.
Do not use
Metzitza.
Yeah,
But Jewish Haredi Jews continue to use it. So apparently it's to take the blood away from the cup.
Because I'm thinking maybe it's that. It's like they're trying to sexualize kids, so they
So
use their life energy in a way that is wasting their pure energy in a sense. I'm not sure. Because I'm trying to think what would be the reasoning behind all of this.
So even with the whole,
Because the paedophilic stuff is there's a whole demonic side to it as well, which is, you know, they kill babies and drink blood for the satanic rituals, which we've actually got clear evidence on.
But is that actually about paedophilia, or is that just more about?
But that ties
the
in.
rest? No, obviously it does. But I'm
like
saying,
with
but
them
when
kids
they
in
look
Hampstead
at it-
Heath, they sexually abused them. They drank babies' blood, they killed babies, and they did rituals.
Yeah.
So it's like spiritual warfare as well as physical.
So it's that must be connected to the purity of them.
Yeah.
So it's like the purer they are in terms of the younger, because they're babies.
It's
and young
easier
children,
to infiltrate their mindset.
It's
I
all
think this
wild.
is one of the biggest problems in society right now,
and that's what's
and it's not being spoken about.
and that's the most important part. Why is that not the topic of conversation?
Yeah.
And I think that it's not a topic of conversation, obviously, because they don't want it to be. This is why people like Harvey Weinstein and Jeffrey Epstein, like, they have to go. And now that they've gone, silence.
Yeah.
Like, and you know, us
The
as
problem is there's still millions more out there.
it's very strange because us as a society, right, we've got our moral compass all twisted and fucked up. So we say, oh, that person's that way inclined, it's okay, it's fine, who cares, and da 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 da, which is fine, right? But you have to ask yourself, why are they subtly forcing more and more ways of life onto us because we have become compliant with it, and they have made society feel like you can't disagree or reject that way of life because they'll label you and say, oh, you're this. No, excuse me, if I don't agree with that, because you can disagree with how I think, I'm fine with that, but I can definitely say that there is bullshit, and I'm not with that. But because we've accepted it, right, that's why I believe ultimately they are going to force this paedophilia thing on us, and we're going to accept it. Well, not me personally, but society, they're going to say, oh yeah, it is a sickness.
Because, you know.
And then the second reason for predicting the eventual approval of paedophilia, and this is what I spoke about in the War and Truth series, is that the same arguments and the same set of liberal values that were used to successfully push the gay marriage agenda, those same arguments, those same values also hold true for the paedophile agenda. See, our culture's decided that the only value that we need is love. Therefore, if something is deemed a valid expression of love, then to this generation it must be a good thing. Man and a woman, two men, two women, three men, doesn't matter to this generation. Love is love, love is all that matters, and no argument can stand against that in the postmodern era. You can counter-appeal to righteousness, you can counter-appeal to holiness, you can counter-appeal to truth and data and statistics, but none of it will matter. Our culture's decided that love has no connection to any of those other values, and these other values certainly don't hold as much weight.
I'll tell you how I think that there is a subtleness. So for instance, we see that a lot of 12-year-olds and 11-year-olds and 13-year-olds now are more sexualized, and people are like, oh, this is teenagers nowadays.
Yeah,
so then it's going to go down even more.
It's the norm.
Even and there's talk of obviously introducing the curriculum, you know, sexual, because they're having sex at this age, it makes it okay. So we teach them how to
because then they're going to say that they're giving children a rights. They're giving them more rights now as people to make decisions for themselves. But yet we all know that they're not. A lot of them aren't competent enough to do it. And when I say competent, I don't mean that they don't understand. I don't mean that they can't make certain decisions. But it's the rationale behind it.
Yeah.
Like at the end of
and
the
also
day, 13.
if you're a kid and you get traumatized, how easy is it for you to traumatize loads more kids?
But
because you're not able to be like, well, I don't know what this is, if this is right or wrong.
It's learned behaviour. So whether it's taught from a book or seen by their peers and their family, their friends, it's all learned behaviour, right? It's all something that's been taught or shown, exemplified to them. So I know, I went to Catholic school, so I didn't have sex education. Does that mean I didn't know what sex was? Of course I did, because it was still everywhere else around me, right? When I come out of school, everybody else is not living this shadowed life of no sex before. There were still people in my school that got pregnant before they finished school. Do you understand? Sometimes it can make them more intrigued. So going to an all-girls school might make them more intrigued to go and fast up with a boy. But the point is, it's what you instill in them. And then at the end of the day, you can take, as they would say, you can take a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. But the more information you give them, the better the decision making that they can have. But if you turn around and go, oh, do you know what? All these young people now, all they do is listen to drill, have sex and drink and smoke. But you're allowing it.
School, the system, like their method of teaching isn't to say, do you know what? Until you lot are conscious and aware,
we're not going to have these conversations.
This is not something that we should be speaking of. Like, it's crazy. We're going to drop sex education on you and leave it.
And that's where the problem is, because what they're not doing, they're not.
They
will only talk about things afterwards. If something happens or they hear of something, oh my gosh, someone got raped. Okay, now let's have a session and talk about rape, just in case any of you guys have ever been in a predicament. But what you haven't done is said, guys, all right, we're going to give you a breakdown of sex. We're going to give you a breakdown of how it physically happens, the different types that can happen, and then what's classed as consensual, what's non-consensual, and the pros and cons. They don't turn around and tell you this might feel uncomfortable, that might hurt, this might happen. So they make everything sound blissful.